Hey everybody, Sujan Patel here from Mailshake. We've got another sales practitioner we're talking to, Colin Stewart. Welcome. Thanks for jumping on this, Colin. I'm excited to talk to you again.
Yeah, man. Good to be here, Sujin.
Thanks, Colin, for jumping on. So for people who don't know you, do you mind doing a quick intro on yourself?
For sure. So my name's Colin Stewart. I'm the co-founder, co-CEO of Predictable Revenue. So CEO of a book, as I like to say. I started a software company, a CRM company 8 years ago, which was a horrible idea. I made every mistake a possible salesperson turned entrepreneur could possibly make. And we've grown that over 8 years through a series of mistakes into building remote sales teams for companies, whether we're helping them figure out how to do it or we're doing it for them.
Awesome. So you definitely know how to build a sales playbook and how to train your folks. So what I want to really pick your brain on is how to use a sales playbook to train and level up your team. We talked about this offline. You've been really doing that and crushing it for your clients. So first and foremost, what's the elements or factors or things you want to put into a useful playbook?
And I love the way you frame it up in terms of a useful playbook, because there's so many. I've literally sat in sales with the sales team and I'm like, hey, so what are your tactics? What your playbook look like? And they'll pull out a binder with printed slides on it. Mm-hmm. That's not helpful. This has been the focus of my last sort of 6-9 months since last summer. So do the math, it's February, has been my sole focus. And I think there's a couple elements, but before I get into the specific elements, there's the actual doc, there's the working doc, and then there's the enablement that surrounds that document. And I think just the question zero is really how do we make that useful? Because it doesn't matter how good the specific document is, if you don't have a structured way of teaching and onboarding people how to use this document, then it's just a really fancy Google Doc that's going to sit and drive and grow cobwebs. So I think there's sort of two elements that are really critical here, and I think we'll probably get into that second one a little bit later. But to answer your question, what are the essential elements of a playbook? I think there's two pieces. So I think there's the strategic side, and I think there's the tactical side. And the strategic side is who we're going after, what are the problems that we solve for them, what are the customer pains, what are the customer stories, right? So all of that, march in this direction, because if you don't nail that, all the tactical stuff doesn't really matter. If we're trying to sell marketing automation software to farmers in Nebraska, they're not going to want anything. And so the strategic direction has to come first. This is the one area where I see a lot of companies are maybe missing a little bit, where they can skimp. I have seen some amazing examples, and those amazing examples, their sales teams do exceptionally well. So the strategic, who we're going after, what are our customers, everything about, from the product management side or product marketing side, why did we build this product? Who did we build it for? The problems that we solve, and then back that up with proof of here are the customer stories that sort of connect the dots there. Second layer is the tactics. How do we find them? How do we close them? What are the tools that we use? What are the things that you need to know about how we sell? What does our sales process look like? All the sort of tactical details.
Love it. Love it. Who owns the sales playbook? Whose responsibility is it?
Yeah, I think depending on the size of the organization, I think if you look at any organization, who owns core process within the company, it's the CEO, right? Mm-hmm. So who's responsible and accountable for making sure that people can do their jobs and removing blockers? It's the CEO. Mm-hmm. As this company gets bigger, the CEO is going to have different layers underneath them. And so whether you're a CEO that has a couple of account execs or you're a CEO that has VP, director, manager, et cetera, I still think myself as CEO, I'm accountable for making sure people have all that documentation. So I would say CEO owns the strategic direction that we talked about above. Who are we going after? The, problems we solve for them, that information is probably coming from the product organization. You might have a product marketing department or product marketing person that owns that piece. And so the strategy is coming from your senior team, and it very well could be your VP of sales or somebody putting this together. Then the tactical layer, that really belongs to the director manager of sales. And so, yeah, it's sort of the strategic, strategic direction comes to the CEO. Then there's the sort of the team that we need to get there. And that's the director, VP, director, manager level. And then the tactics we're going to use is more director, manager level.
Love it. Love it. I love the fact that like multiple people are responsible actually for updating it, right? And kind of keeping it relevant, but ultimately it falls on the CEO, but lots of kind of manager, director, VP level accountability along the way. So I guess, how do managers kind of use this when they have like new salespeople or they're trying to upskill or up level their sales team on an ongoing basis?
Yeah. So I think there are I'll split that into two questions. How do we onboard them, and then how do we keep it fresh, and how do we reinforce it? So like I alluded to earlier, if you just write a playbook and then don't show it to anybody, it does no good, right? Mm-hmm. If a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound? No. I mean, that's not the right answer, but that's the right answer for this one here. So at a high level, who owns, or like, how do you onboard people to that? I think you need to have a specific plan for 30, 60, 90 days, and 12 months of a salesperson's lifetime. And so the first 30 days is going to be owned by somebody different than the first 90 days, than the first year. And I think having specific goals, documentation, so I think one, it's specific goals built into, okay, here's the playbook, here's the onboarding playbook, and then here's the sort of steady state playbook. But here are the things we want you to accomplish and be able to demonstrate in the first 30, 60, 90 days, and then 12 months. And then here's the how you're going to get there. And so usually that looks like who you need to talk to, who you're going to shadow, watch these videos, read these books, what it looks like at predictable revenue, because we're in the middle of going through this, as we probably have a roughly right now 30-page document that has links to potentially 100 pages of external reading. And then every week we run we've got a new cohort of people. So every week we run a 90-minute training session where we go through one of the sections, and then we leave some room for questions. And then there's sort of each week is building on itself. And then we'll have like tests and certifications that say, okay, now that you've gone through 2 of these sessions, answer some questions on this and let's see how much you retained. Because you need to document it, you need to teach it, and then you need to test to make sure that they've actually retained it. And so that's how I look at the onboarding side of things. Then there's the reinforcement, because it's one thing if you just teach them how to do it, but if your actions on a daily, weekly, monthly basis of your frontline sales managers or just frontline managers, if they don't reinforce the process, if they don't draw back on, okay, you read this in the playbook, if their actions don't reinforce the playbook, then there's no sense in writing one in the first place. I shouldn't say that, but you're going to lose a lot of the benefits of having one. And so I think the 3 things you need to do are regular one-on-ones. And within that, you're talking about their journey along, wherever they are, whether you're sort of in that onboarding phase, whether you're in that first year phase, or you're doing more of a quarterly review process. But you've got your regular one-on-ones, and I'm not going to go into detail on how to do that. And then you've got your call review, right? So if you're an account exec, you're bringing calls and you're saying, okay, well, if basically you want to review the work. Right. And so if you're an AE, this could be listening to, I do get my reps to bring their worst call. Say, hey, bring me your worst call from last week and let's work on how to get better. Or if you got a question, or if you got a tactic, something you got stuck on, don't bring me your best call. This isn't a chance to show off your metrics. I can see in your metrics, you're doing a good job. Bring me your worst and let's figure out how we can improve something there. So if you're an AE, it could be a call with a customer. If you're an SDR, it could be a set of cold calls, it could be an email. So that's a weekly thing that I do with my team to make sure that I'm giving them feedback and I'm helping reinforce what's in the playbook. A really great example is sales stages and qualification methodology. In that call review, in that pipeline review meeting, I'm making sure that everything has been documented, and then I'm reinforcing that. All right, so are you in this stage? Well, how do you know you're in this stage? And I'm questioning them and I'm challenging them on what we've taught them to make sure that I am the living embodiment of that playbook. And then the last piece is the call scoring, which is just randomly reviewing a couple calls a month that says, just as a gut check to make sure that they're not just bringing me their mediocre calls and saying they're the worst calls. I want to have that trust but verify. And so I'll have a look at a couple of calls, and we've got a call scoring methodology that we that we'll go through and say, okay, here's the feedback. Here's how you did. Here's what you could. Here's where we think you should, focus your development time.
Love it. Love it. I love the fact that you're using it at multiple levels on an ongoing basis, and then also just kind of calling out the sales reps, not just to share their good stuff, right? Because it's so easy for somebody to be vulnerable, and then acknowledging the fact that they do have to be vulnerable to talk about this and have that meeting. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, that's how you improve. Awesome. So obviously, sales. The sales playbook is kind of a living document. People are always going to be iterating and improving it. The real question is like, how, are you always iterating and improving this? Or is this something that like, this is what's working, let's go with this, and then we'll go test stuff, and 6 months later we'll update this? I guess, like, where are you updating this? How does that work?
Yeah. I mean, I can answer specific to how we do it here. I think every business is going to have a different, like if you're selling a commodity and you're in a huge company and your products and customers aren't changing that frequently, then it's probably going to be pretty steady state. If you're in a brand new startup, things are probably going to be changing on a day-to-day basis. So it really depends on the context there. I think, so I'm always in favor of, no matter what size of company, is always trying to get a little bit better, right? I kind of follow that, like as a rep, that 80-20 rule, right? Where the majority of stuff that I'm going to say is scripted, but every now and then I'm going to try something different. And that's just me as a rep. And I encourage our people when I manage our sales team. And for context, I for the last few months, I haven't been managing our sales team. We found somebody really awesome. But when I did, I would encourage them to try new things, and don't be afraid to experiment, and don't be afraid to, like, we want to learn that. We want to understand, like, there's always going to be there's always like tiny little improvements that we can make in how we do things. Because the base process was built by me, and I'm not so arrogant to think that I'm the only intelligent person that can build a way of selling. And so we hire smart people. We expect them to contribute and make small improvements, along the way. And those regular meetings. So if you're doing regular one-on-ones, if you're doing that regular call review where you're working on them, you're going to see, oh, little tweaks here. Oh, you tried something new there. Well, how did that work? Okay, it worked or it bombed, right? Or maybe the way that you've been doing things for the lifetime that you've worked here is actually, maybe the customers are changing, right? So that feedback is going to come out in the one-on-ones. It's going to come out in the call review. You're going to see it in the call scoring, and just using that as a feedback loop to build those little improvements. And not so arrogant. And I try not to be so arrogant to think I'm the only one that can add value to our playbook. And I recognize the value that the salespeople bring, is that they are our front line. They're the front line that's in contact with prospects and with customers. They know what messaging is going to work. They know what's going to resonate, what's not going to resonate. Anytime where I've worried about, is our product losing effectiveness, you could look at doing a market study. You could look at, all these fancy things, but really the best place to start is with the salespeople, right? What objections are you getting? Are there any new objections that are coming up? Because that, your sales efficiency is almost a leading indicator of product quality, or at least perceived product quality in the market, right? If your salespeople have a really easy time closing, product's great. If they're really, really struggling, then it's like, okay. And if they're really struggling and you trust them, and they're really well trained, and they've, proven performance in the past within your company, and they're starting to struggle, then it could be an indication that, hey, maybe the product isn't as competitive. So I use that as a barometer of our product and product market fit, because that's always changing and evolving.
Love it. Love it. That was fantastic. I think what you said, if you keep things on a consistent basis and then allow that flexibility and vulnerability, ultimately you're allowing for sales reps to breathe, be vulnerable, improve, and kind of consistently maintain that, and ultimately gain the most sales, right? Or increase, have the highest close rate. Mm-hmm. Great. So where can people find out or reach out or kind of follow along to learn more about your sales endeavors?
Yeah. I mean, I think, since we're in the spirit of testing and trying to test and iterate, just to back up what I've said, I would check us out on YouTube. We have a series called Outbound Labs, where it's our internal team, where we're doing this on behalf of ourselves, on our sales team internally, and on behalf of our customers. So YouTube, if you look up predictable revenue, you check out the series we do called Outbound Labs. I think that's a great place to start. I also run a podcast, Predictable Revenue Podcast, or you can hit me up on LinkedIn if you got other questions. Colin Stewart.
Awesome. Thanks, Colin.
Cool. Thanks, Ajin.